In 2017, Playtonic Games made a desperate attempt to recapture the lost glory of old platforming games. They did this via Kickstarter, managing to raise over $2 million in the hopes to create the perfect successor to Banjo Kazooie. Sadly, due to a number of design choices and a clear lack of polish, Yooka Laylee turned out to be less satisfying than slamming your face into a brick wall. As a whole, it had a lot of potential, but it could have been a lot better. But did this mean that Playtonic's new IP was doomed for failure? As it turns out, no. Because in 2 years' time, Playtonic Games had announced a sequel, one which shifted away from a 3D plane and onto the 2D realm, emulating classic franchises like Donkey Kong and Mario. It intended to provide players with an enjoyable yet challenging experience. But does it manage to escape the failures of its predecessor? Or is it yet another disaster courtesy of Playtonic Games? Well, let's find out. This is Yooka Laylee in the Impossible Lair. Taking place after the events of Yooka Laylee, the Impossible Lair follows our titular duo as they once again face off against Capital B, who intends to take control of the bees in the royal stingdom using the hive mind. So the ruler of the kingdom, Queen Phoebe, tasks you with stopping Capital B, before he unleashes the full might of the hive mind on the world. But in order to do this, first you need to find him within his hideout, the Impossible Lair. A massive labyrinth full of traps, monsters, and other unseen horrors. Navigating it will require cunning, precision, and a lot of health. Sadly, our protagonists are a bit lacking in the health department, so the Queen proposes a new plan. All over the world, her royal guards have been captured by Capital B, but if Yooka and Laylee are able to free them, then they'll be able to create a powerful shield that they can use to protect themselves within the Impossible Lair. It's a crazy plan, one that will require a lot of time and effort, but considering the challenge that lays before them, it may be the only way for our heroes to restore peace to the world and conquer the Impossible Lair. It's a pretty straightforward setup, one that gives the player all the excuse they need to traverse this game's vast overworld and tackle its numerous levels. Of course, if you're expecting any depth to be found in this game's narrative, then you're bound to be disappointed. It's made abundantly clear early on that the story isn't why you want to play this game. Rather, it's the Impossible Lair itself. The sheer difficulty of this one level will have you scouring every inch of this world for anything that will improve your chances at completing it. Still, I will admit that it was nice to see all these quirky characters again. One thing that Yooka Laylee was able to nail was its bizarre and cartoonish character designs, both for the enemies and the many NPCs you interact with in the game. It helps this bizarre world stand out on its own, as if the change of perspective didn't do that already. If the original Yooka Laylee was a 3D platformer desperately held together with duct tape, then the Impossible Lair is a solid 2D platformer that's been carefully constructed like a Roman amphitheater. Seriously, the difference in quality between these two games is astonishing. No more do you have to worry about stamina bars and large overworlds devoid of life. Everything in this game has been streamlined to provide the best experience possible, allowing for a fun yet challenging gameplay loop that perfectly captures the essence of the Donkey Kong Country series. There are 40 levels for you to tackle, and each one of them has a member of the battalion for you to free. But in order to reach them, you'll need to carefully navigate a series of dangerous obstacles, whether by jumping, gliding, rolling, sliding, swimming, or climbing. Yooka is an agile little lizard, and the developers took full advantage of this, providing each level with their own gimmicks and challenges for you to conquer. Along the way, you'll be able to collect quills, which can be used to purchase various upgrades, and twit coins, which are needed to bypass the various paywalls set up by Trouser. Of course, with so many hazards to deal with, completing even one of the Impossible Lair's levels won't be easy. Needless to say, you will probably die a lot in this game, but I quickly found that to be less of an issue than I expected. Unlike the first game, there is no life system in the Impossible Lair, meaning repeated deaths won't send you back to the beginning of a level, with the exception of the Impossible Lair, of course. Instead, you start out every level with 2 hit points, which are indicated by the presence of Yooka's partner, Laylee. She functions as both your second hit point and the means from which you can access your more advanced moves, like gliding and the buddy slam. However, upon taking damage, Laylee will leave Yooka, and if you're not quick enough to catch her, you'll effectively lose a hit point, along with any of the moves she's associated with. So from that point forward, until you're able to find a bell to resummon her, Yooka will die should he take any damage. It's a unique take on the classic life system, and effectively encourages the player to beat every level without taking a single hit. However, should you die, then don't worry. Like I said, you won't be sent back to the beginning of the level. Instead, you'll simply lose all of the quills and coins you've picked up since your last checkpoint. Compared to the last game, the developers are a lot more forgiving when it comes to failure. So much so that should you fail repeatedly to complete a certain section of a level, then the game will actually offer to skip you forward to the next checkpoint, effectively allowing you to bypass the hardest sections of a level level so that you can tackle them again when you're ready. Although by doing this, you do risk missing out on collectibles, so keep that in mind. Which honestly is what surprised me most about this game. I was constantly debating whether to take the easy route or to push forward with the more difficult path, but not because I found the gameplay frustrating. Quite the opposite, actually. The controls are responsive and very easy to master. In truth, I was simply enjoying the challenge, more so than I ever did with the first Yooka Laylee. Every time I was confronted with a new gameplay hazard or gimmick, I was thrilled. So whenever I couldn't beat a particular section, I was constantly questioning my own skills, rather than the game's design. In short, the Impossible Lair effectively asks you to challenge yourself, while also holding out a safety net should you fall too far. The best demonstration of this is in the tonics. In the first game, they were just a means for you to modify the gameplay and visuals. However, while they still do this in the sequel, the developers have added a unique twist to it. Essentially, with every tonic equipped, the number of quills you receive after a level changes, as showcased by a simple score multiplier, meaning that depending on which tonics you equip, this multiplier will rise or fall. So by the end of a level, you have the potential to lose or receive more quills than you actually got. It's a neat little feature, often encouraging you to use more damaging tonics in the hopes of earning more quills, but by using some of the more beneficial tonics, you'll stand a better chance at completing some of the harder levels, and earning all the collectibles, at the cost of less quills to spend. This risk versus reward mentality is interwoven into every aspect of the Impossible Lair's design, none more so than its final level. Everything you do in this game is in service of the main overarching goal, which is to beat capital B and complete the Impossible Lair. With every Royal B you free, your B shield earns an extra hit point, effectively giving you more time to tackle the Impossible Lair and learn the layout of the final level. In total, there are 48 Royal Bs for you to find, which you'd think would give you plenty of health to easily complete the level, but you'd be dead wrong. This level is without question one of the hardest platforming challenges I've ever had to undertake, one which the B shield can only take you so far. Don't believe me? Well, consider that there are multiple stages to the Impossible Lair, each one culminating in a fight with capital B, and each stage has its own layout and hazards for you to deal with. Then you'll begin to realize how insane this one level is. There is only one saving grace to this level. It's the fact that every time you face off against capital B, you unlock a new checkpoint. So should you die from that point forward, then you have the option to restart at a later stage of the Impossible Lair, rather than right from the start. The trade-off is that your B shield will only have as many hit points as you've managed to retain upon arriving at the checkpoint. So for example, if you reach stage 2 with only 10 hit points, then any time you restart the level from stage 2, you only have 10 hit points to complete the rest of it. The only way to change this is if you go back to the beginning of the level and reach that exact checkpoint again, only with more hit points than last time, which isn't easy, but believe me, nothing about this massive gauntlet is easy. It is deliberately designed to eat away at your life until there's nothing left. But if you persevere and keep pushing yourself, then eventually you'll see that this level isn't as impossible as capital B believes it to be. Of course, if you keep failing and want to take a break from all the insane platforming, then thankfully the game's overworld can provide you with the reprieve you need. Taking a page out of The Legend of Zelda and Pokemon, the Impossible Lair boasts a large top-down world for you to explore, which unlike its predecessor has taken care to make sure every inch of it has a purpose in the game, providing the player with a vast interconnected map full of secrets to uncover, puzzles to solve, and levels to unlock, whilst also being occupied by many of this franchise's bizarre characters. Of course, if you're hoping for some difficult puzzles to help unwind, then you're going to be disappointed. Most of the challenges in the overworld are relatively simple, with very few that will genuinely test your intelligence. But even so, what the overworld does succeed in is making good use of its space. One of my personal issues with the original Yooka Laylee was despite having several large-scale worlds for you to explore, they just felt empty, which isn't ideal for a collectible-centric game like that. At times it felt as though you were traversing a world made for someone twice your size. So for the Impossible Lair, the developers chose to scale back their level size and prioritize general utility. This is further illustrated by the design of the platforming levels and their alternate level states. Through your actions in the overworld, you're able to drastically alter the conditions and design of the platforming levels, whether by diverting a stream in order to flood one level, freezing another with ice berries, or literally flipping a level book upside down, resulting in the whole level now being upside down. Such simple changes on a 3D plane each result in a drastically different world for you to explore, leaving you guessing as to what you might find waiting for you on the other side. Honestly, I was expecting to be disappointed with the Impossible Lair's gameplay, but the developers have managed to successfully take the mechanics which were set up in the first game and perfectly adjust them for this new one, whilst also including a host of new features which allow for a more cohesive and engaging experience. As if that wasn't enough, every level in this game is being backed up by some lovely tunes. Much like its predecessor, the Impossible Lair's music is the perfect mix of retro and modern beats, one which perfectly sets the tone of each of this game's 40 levels. From the more carefree feel present in the earlier levels, to the more focused and serious edge that accompanies you in the later ones. No matter where you go, whether in the overworld or in one of the game's many levels, the music follows you every step of the way, like a third companion that you have no fear of losing. It goes without saying, but this is a stellar soundtrack, one which manages to pay tribute to classic side-scrollers, whilst also keeping itself distinct from everything that's come before. And as befitting for such a charming platformer, it's backed up by some masterful sound design, which, like the soundtrack, blends its more quirky audio with a mixture of retro and more realistic sounds, like the harsh scraping of a solid wood block dragging along a rough surface, or the squishy texture present in a world now covered in honey. These sounds don't just serve to engross the player in this game's world, but they allow every stage, including those which have been altered in the overworld, to feel as lively and distinct from each other, without having to sacrifice any details, whether from an audio or visual standpoint. When it comes to 2D side-scrollers like these, for any player, their biggest fear is losing track of the player character. Thankfully, the Impossible Lair doesn't suffer from this issue. Thanks to the Unity engine, the developers are able to perfectly render their 2D environments without having to sacrifice any of the detail from the 3D models. As a result, Yooka and Laylee both stand out quite prominently thanks to their bright color palette. Even amidst the more vibrant levels, you'd think it'd be easy to lose them. But no, their cartoonish design actually captures your attention, especially against the more orderly world design. This also extends to your enemies, which when paired with the game's 2D perspective, easily allows you to see all the opposition you'll have to contend with in every level. The only time that I found the game's visuals could be overwhelming was during the Impossible Lair, yet even then that easily could be attributed to the large variety of hazards present in the final level, which again can easily be resolved once your B-shield is strong enough. So while the in-game hazards are easy to spot, the backdrops are perfect for adding an extra layer of flair to an already pretty game. They really help give this game's world a sense of scale, while also complementing the detail present in the levels themselves. Hell, even the overworld is ripe with graphical details, from the gentle waves of the beachside area to the oversized flowers which spring you upward. Everything in the Impossible Lair's design is simply impeccable. It's quite the startling contrast when compared to Playtonic's previous work. I'm not even going to try to deny it. Yooka Laylee in the Impossible Lair is a lot of fun. I'm so happy to see that Playtonic has found its footing and actually managed to create a genuinely fun game, one which manages to strike the right balance between fast and precise platforming, whilst also featuring a vast overworld full of places to explore and secrets to uncover, effectively encouraging the player to seek out everything this game has to offer, without having to resort to poorly designed minigames to pad out the runtime. All the while, every challenge you complete takes you one step closer towards conquering the Impossible Lair. So while it might have a simple story with characters that rely a little too much on their quirky web-based humor, Yooka Laylee in the Impossible Lair has proven to be a far better game than its predecessor. And not just because they removed the stupid stamina bar and actually made sure the game is playable before releasing it. Put simply, it's a challenging platformer accompanied by some stellar beats that leave you on the edge of your seat. If this is a sign of what to expect from this franchise in the future, then I say, give me more.